Kesavi Hari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gauda Haribo, 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 Gauda Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It appears that we are on text number 19? 18. Okay. So, please repeat this verse after me, line by line. Attastavopanamidam kalevaram na dariyishye sittikantagarhina Jagdasya mohadhi vishuddhim andaso Jugupshitasyo dharanam prachakshate. By His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This is Sati Devi speaking, and she is saying, therefore, I shall no longer bear this unworthy body, which has been received from you, who have blasphemed Lord Shiva. If someone has taken food which is poisonous, the best treatment is to vomit. Purport. Since Sati was the representation of the external potency of the Lord, it was in her power to vanquish many universes, including many dakshas. But in order to save her husband from the charge that he employed his wife, Sati, to kill Daksha because he could not do so due to his inferior position, she decided to give up her body. Mukam karoti bachalam mangam langayate grimit kripitam mande Sri Gurun Jinatanam Paramananda Madhavam. Once more, this verse reads, Atas tavotpanam idam kalevaram na dharyasye shitikanta garhina jagdasya mohadhi vishuddhim ondasa jugup shuttas yodharanam prachakshate. We can repeat this translation. Therefore I shall no longer bear this unworthy body, which has been received from you, who have blasphemed Lord Shiva. If someone has taken food which is poisonous, The best treatment is to vomit. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, there are some very beautiful verses which address the Lord and His potency. So out of these verses, one came to mind as I was reading this. Vishnu Patni Mahamayi Mahapurusha Lakshne Priyetya Me Mahabhage Loka Matar Namostute. I thought of that because of this phrase in the purport that Sati has the power, being the external potency of the Lord, to vanquish many universes. So in this verse, Loka Matar, this is addressing Lakshmi Devi. So Lakshmi is the mother of the universe. Vishnu Patni, she is the wife of Lord Vishnu. Mahamaya, and she is also Mahamaya. So this Sati that we are hearing about in this section of Bhagavatam is actually, as Prabhupada said about, often I say this, when he named one of my god sisters, Mahamaya, another face of the internal potency. So, Vishnu Patni Mahamaya, wife of Lord Vishnu, the Mahamaya, Mahapurusha Lakshane, and with all the same qualities as the Mahapurush, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada also said in a lecture specifically about the external potency that she is the power of Lord Krishna, the power of the Supreme Lord separately manifest for the creation, Shishti Stiti Pralaya, Sadhana Shaktir Eka, Chayevya Yashri Bhubrani Bibharta Durga. This Durga Devi is separately manifest. There seems to be a separation. Therefore she's called Bhinna Prakriti, the separated energy. And what is her purpose? Shrishti Stiti Pralaya, the creation, the maintenance, and the destruction of this universe, and Prabhupada mentions all the material universes. So, someone so powerful as Sati could have certainly dispatched Daksha. But in terms of this Leela, of course, Daksha, one thing is, she is the father, apparently, of Sati Devi. And now another point has been brought up by Srila Prabhupada in this purport, that being the wife of Lord Shiva, and this is interesting, that she is so powerful, but yet she is very chaste. Sati means chaste, very devoted to her husband, and so she does not wish to appear to be overstepping her husband's authority. So she's thinking that I could dispatch this insignificant Daksha. But if I did this, then there would be the problem that, one thing, that he is my father, and what would people say about that? And also, people would say, as Prabhupada points out here, that my husband has used me in this way because he was inferior to Daksha. So, wanting to respect her husband, Lord Shiva, then she thought, let me just give up this body. And she concludes in this verse, having accepted this body from you is like having taken poisonous food. And the only thing one can do in that case to save one's life is to vomit. So to cover all these considerations, her Daksha being her father, Lord Shiva being her husband, she decided to simply give up the body. So this particular pastime in this fourth canto is very interesting. I remember myself when I was a new devotee, in the Boston temple, we sometimes did this as a play on Sunday, this story of Daksha and Sati and Lord Shiva. And it is most instructive, particularly this point of the bodily relationships. Bodily relationships we see here. Sati is so powerful, but there is this, it's in Sanskrit, vyavaharika, means conventional consideration. That Daksha is her father, she is the daughter. And it was because of this vyavaharika consideration that she has come to this place to begin with. Although her husband, Lord Shiva, he was not very happy that she went. He himself did not go because he knew that the atmosphere would not be favorable, that there was every chance of her father, who is very puffed up, making some insulting remark. But, so this is one point, because of her attachment, it is all explained by Srila Prabhupada, apparent attachment we should say, to see her mother and her sisters and to associate with the society of devatas. She insisted on going. And this is the reason, this bodily consideration, vyavaharika, is the excuse in Daksha's mind for committing these offenses. That Lord Shiva, he is my son-in-law, so he's inferior to me. He's the great Mahadev. This Chirodidi, what is it? Chiram Dadhi Vikara Vishesh Yogat Sonjayate Nihitatak Bratagasyato Yakshamutama Pitita Samapaiti Karyat Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Actually, Lord Shiva, just as Sati is external potency of the Lord, so Lord Shiva, he is also considered to be a form. He's called Ishvara, so he's a form of God. This particular form of God, just as yogurt is a form of milk, transformation of milk. So they're the same and yet they're different because, as Prabhupada explains, from milk you get yogurt, but from yogurt you can't get milk. So there is a oneness and there is a difference also. But Lord Shiva, Mahadev, among demigods, he is addressed as Mahadev, the greatest, Ishvara, the controller. So powerful, but due to, again, to this vyavaharika consideration, bodily consideration, Daksha is thinking, he's only my son-in-law, so he has to respect me. Yes, that is conventional. That is conventional. With these bodies, there are conventions attached to our relationships. That's true. But someone in Daksha's position, Prajapati, that means leader among the devatas, he is supposed to have spiritual vision. But his vision was clouded due to his absorption in the bodily conception. So this lesson comes out very, very, shall we say, dramatically, transcendentally dramatically, that if one succumbs to the bodily conception of life and begins to think that the conventions of the body, the designations, upadhi, Prabhupada says there are two classifications of the individual soul, Upadhi Bhuta and Jiva Bhuta, Brahma Bhuta. Two states. of the jiva. He can be Upadhi Buddha or he can be Brahma Buddha. So Upadhi means having accepted the designation of this body. One's consciousness, one's vision becomes clouded. But someone in Daksha's position should not be like that. He should be Pandit, Pandita Samadarshana, seeing all living entities as spirit soul, and particularly being able to see great personalities like Lord Shiva, their true transcendental position. But he lost that vision. And so, one can see when one is fortunate enough to be in the association of exalted souls, but his consciousness nonetheless degrades, he becomes an ordinary person. And we have other lessons when we see in the Bhagavatam and other scriptures. Often this comes up about Indra, Indradev. Srila Prabhupada explains in his purports that Indra is actually an ordinary living entity. By the force of his karma, he has come up to that position of being the king of the Devatas. But we find in the Bhagavatam he is sometimes engaging in very peculiar activities, being driven again by this bodily conception. And it becomes embarrassing. It becomes an embarrassment. That's why the famous reason why Indra has 1,000 eyes over his body. That's a well-known embarrassment for him. And so we see the same here with Prajapati Daksha, because the consciousness has been allowed to degrade into the bodily conception. And yet he is in that position, one of the prominent demigods, associating with other great personalities. And so this is a recipe for aparadha, for offense. You see, he has become an ordinary person, an ordinary living entity, although in that high position. So, what is that? Manyate jagat. How does that phrase go? Anyway, yes, exactly. So Prabhupada used to cite this, that one sees the jagat, the world, and all others inevitably according to his own position. So if one has allowed oneself to fall into this bodily conception, Upadhi Buddha conception, then one will see all others like that too. And if one is in exalted association, then this becomes offensive. You see? One should never think that way about great devotees, great personalities, simply in terms of external considerations. Again, vyavaharika. But he did so and made offense. And then we see in this Bhagavatam account how severe that offense is. Lord Shiva, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, he is considered the greatest among the Vaishnavas because he's so compassionate. That's the quality of Vaishnava. He's compassionate. He desires the deliverance of even the most fallen conditioned souls. This is exactly Lord Shiva's. This is his business, to uplift. He's the controller of the mode of ignorance. He takes charge of these living entities in the tamo guna out of his compassion for them. And Prabhupada explains this very nicely, how he's working with the Supreme Lord Krishna to deliver these most fallen, ignorant living entities. And Prabhupada explains the ignorant living entities come to him thinking he is so powerful, even thinking he's God. and they worship him and they do austerities for his sake in order to receive benediction. So he gives them boons because he is the greatest among demigods. So makes them so powerful that no one can defeat them except the Lord himself. Like in the case of Ravana, he got so powerful by the grace of Lord Shiva. So therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead had to come as Lord Ramachandra. And that was Lord Shiva's benediction, real benediction upon Ravana, that he would be killed by Lord Ramachandra. Huh? You know, it is said that if one dies in Varanasi, which is the city of Lord Shiva, then one will attain liberation just by dying there. So then one may think, how is that possible? Because Lord Shiva only, he does not give liberation, only the Supreme Lord gives liberation. No, but by being in that place, whoever dies, Lord Shiva is immediately there as that person is leaving the body, and he chants into his ear, Ram, the holy name of Lord Ramachandra. And that is why everyone within Varanasi, when they leave their body, they're liberated. So he's devotee. He's devotee, but we see from this narrative the severe reaction of Vaishnava aparadha. Such a great compassionate devotee, and Daksha was so mean-spirited as to blaspheme him, and that offense took the form of Virabhadra, this gigantic energy of Lord Shiva, demoniac energy of Lord Shiva, which manifested from one of Shiva's hairs. Many, many arms, as tall as the sky. And destroying everything. Killing Daksha, cutting off his head. So this is most instructive. It's a very, as I said, transcendently dramatic pastime. A lot of action. A lot of conflict. Therefore very interesting, but there's a most important lesson to be learned from this. If one has had the fortune to come into the association of great souls, then one has to be very, very careful not to let the consciousness degrade back into the bodily conception. All right then, a very short purport, so I'll stop here. Are there any questions? Yes?
I wonder what kind of liberation does Shiva give to these people who live there? If there's around anybody, what kind of liberation?
Well, the kind of liberation depends on the living entity. There are different kinds of liberation because there are different transcendental attractions, you see. So, if one is simply an impersonalist, and many of the followers of Lord Shiva are impersonalists, then they will be liberated by hearing the holy name of Lord Ramachandra, but because of their particular attraction, their particular inclination in spiritual life, then they're very liable to end up in the Brahmajyoti, because that is what they want. But that's for the impersonalist. Yes?
There was you said this 3 days ago about the offenses. The Vaishnava aparadha should cut off the tongue, the finger, and then the Vaishnava just leaves the place. And I was wondering, usually what, from my experience, which is not big, what to do if a Vaishnava is offending another Vaishnava.
Well, then he's not a Vaishnava. Prabhupada said, the Vaishnava, he neither gives material blessings, nor does he curse or offend. Ordinary Brahmanas may do that. I was telling in that talk, there's a difference between a Brahmana, ordinary Brahmana, and a Vaishnava. So an ordinary Brahmana, he will give material blessings, and he may also become agitated by someone's behavior and pronounce a curse or like that, offend. But Vaishnavas don't do that. Yes?
Maharaj was speaking about the material potency, sati. It seems that Prabhupada sometimes said that the material energy, or more specifically the atoms, that they're
Atoms?
yeah, that they're living entities, that they're spirit souls.
Atoms are spirit souls. Well, I suppose if you have some insight into this. Yes, ultimately everything is Brahman. It means everything is spirit. And the spirit soul is all-pervading. So philosophically, we can think like that. But practically speaking, here we are in this material world. You see? So that's an interesting, as I say, insight or thought or speculation that ultimately, within every atom, ultimately, there is Paramatma. And wherever there's Paramatma, there will also be Jivatma. Because wherever the Lord is, all His energies are there. Like Prabhupada said, also Prakriti, material nature, is also there in the heart, along with Paramatma and the Jiva. So, Bhoktyam Bhogyam Prerataram Chamatva Sarvam Proktyam Trivinam Brahmanetat. This quotation from the Vedic literature is there in Prabhupada's purport in Gita. Trividam Brahmanetat. There is the living entity who thinks he's the enjoyer. There is the energy which he thinks he can enjoy. And then there is the controller of both. These are the three features of Brahman, the absolute truth. So, that will also then, this is also to be understood even within the atom. Brahman will be found in this way. So, yes. But still, here we are. We are here embodied in this material nature. We are in the material world. And yes, this is Krishna's energy, but the way to understand that, well, yes, theoretically through philosophy, but practically we have to engage this energy in Krishna's service. Then we can actually, this is how Prabhupada explained, we can realize that Vedic statement, he says in one purport, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, that everything is Brahman, by the process of devotional service. So, this is the way to realize that everything is spirit by this practical method of devotional service. Anything else? Yes?
Something that comes journey from my Jewish background. Is it possible to explain or to understand, or it's actually coming on through experience, the concept of Satchitananda Vigraha? Can we really understand what it is, or only when we actually been liberated we can actually understand this statement?
Amsterdam questions. Well, there's understanding and there's realization, you see. So, as I said in answer to his question, there is, in our philosophy, there is what we could say, a theoretical aspect. In other words, what I mean by that is we haven't realized it as it is, but we get some understanding to satisfy our intelligence. Because this is, we have to act now in Krishna consciousness, although we're not Krishna conscious. So what is the adjustment? The adjustment is we have intelligence. Srila Prabhupada said there's a soul, and the next thing to the soul is the intelligence. So if the intelligence then can theoretically, so to speak, theoretically accept the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, then the intelligence becomes pacified, satisfied, and we can go on serving Krishna. And then, by the process of serving the Lord, gradually one becomes purified of the modes of material nature. And then, pratyashavagamam dharmam, as Krishna says in Gita, then the truth of Krishna consciousness becomes manifest by direct perception. Not through the intelligence, you see, not referring to the logic and reason and the shastric authority through the intelligence, but one directly sees Krishna, yam shama shudrama chinchaguna surupam, in his inconceivable form. Premanjana churita bhakti viluchina, when the eyes are smeared with the salve of love. But that will take some time before the eyes become anointed with love of Godhead. So until that time, we have the philosophy, and this intelligence should become trained up in that. This is why we attend these classes. This is why we ask questions, to satisfy the intelligence so that we can come at least to the nishta stage. Nishta means firm faith. Nishta means we may not have the answers to all questions, and we may once in a while meet some big, so-called big speculator, philosopher who knows many things that we're not so familiar with. And he makes arguments which we're not perhaps able to answer in detail, because he's talking about things that we as simple devotees aren't so familiar with. So we just keep plugging away with him at the essential point. You're not this body, you're a servant, and you're meant for serving Krishna. And he may be talking, so he talks so many things, and he, an ordinary person may become persuaded by what he says. Well, this is very interesting. But a devotee on the Nishta stage, he thinks, although he's polite to him, but he thinks this is all nonsense. and dismisses it. It doesn't affect him. Even he can't convince this person, because he's all absorbed in his own speculations. He can't convince this person about Krishna consciousness. But he himself is not in any way influenced by what he has to say. So at least we should come to this nishta stage, where the intelligence is firmly lodged at Krishna's lotus feet. And we can see the absolute truth, Shastra Chakshus, through the eyes of Shastra. So in this way you can understand. You can understand Satchitananda Vigraha. Realizing it, that will be another phase. But now you can understand. All right, I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.